You all know he's kept us waiting just a little bit for this special celebration. We're glad that we're here with you, John, this afternoon. It's been 80 years of glorious living, John. Lots of fun, lots of laughter. Whenever John's involved, we're going to laugh. It's, you know, something's going to happen. Johnny Butler's going to be in the centre. Lots of hijinks, lots of larrikinism. We wouldn't have missed being part of it for quids, John. Been terrific. At risk of boring you all stupid, I'm going to remind you of some of the things that John has got up to over the years, if that's all right. He was brought up in what we always used to say is a Salvation Army home. Now that doesn't mean that he was like at Bayswater, separated from his family because he was particularly naughty. It just means that his family, when he was a kid, was totally involved in the Salvation Army. And he used to go along there all day on Sunday, and most of your activities during the week were at the Salvation Army. That's supposed to bring you up to be a God-fearing gentleman who wouldn't say shit for sixpence, as they say. Sometimes there are failures. Assistance doesn't always work. And I'm not sure that John was the best Bible scholar that the Salvation Army ever had. Jimmy Thompson, who can remember John as far back as anybody, says that he can remember being in Sunday school and then have sort of glorious marches around the Sunday school, but as the kids were marching around in circles, John would lead him and Jimmy out the back door. But he may not have been a great Bible student, but he did become a fantastic musician. He certainly learned how to play the euphonium. His father before him was a fine player, his brother was a player, and John was a super euphonium player. He started off on the cornet, as you'll see in one of those pictures, became a cornet player, and moved on from the Preston Salvation Army and the Preston Silver Band, which is where he learned to play. He moved on from there to the Salvation Army's very best band, which was called the Melbourne Staff Band. And you didn't get into the Melbourne Staff Band if you couldn't play. He started there in about 1951, I think, John. He stayed in there for 13 years, and some of the time he sat next to Colin Woods down there at the end of the... must have been a great education for you in those days too, Colin.
I always had a hanky to stuff in my mouth. He was hilarious.
Yes. He was the principal euphonium, he was a soloist. And when I say he was a soloist, it meant that he would go to a program, or he would go to a broadcast, which would be live in those days. He'd go along there, and when he got there on the night, the conductor wanted to play such and such a solo. Now it's not as if he's going to play Abide With Me or something. It means he's going to play an Aaron variation. He's going to go for 15 minutes, and John's got to remember it off the top of his head without any notice, without the bandmaster saying 2 weeks in advance, John, this is what I want to do in 2 weeks' time. On the night, he used to have to do it, and John, time and time again, was a performer to be remembered. He was remembered especially sometimes by the conductor, because in the middle of the piece there might be a cadenza. A cadenza is a sort of free bit where there's no band playing, and the soloist can do what he likes for just it's generally 3 or 4 bars, John, isn't it? But sometimes John could go over 10 bars, or maybe 20 bars, and later on, if he felt like it, he'd let the rest of the band join in again. The conductor didn't know what was going on. John Butler was in charge. About 1954, he married Joan, and then later on, Joanne and Peter came along, and granddaughter Zoe is over in Germany, as you all know. I first met John in 1963 at Laverton, when I was a little palm, just arrived from England as green as grass. I knew nothing about living in this big new world that we called Australia. John Butler, who I met there, he was about 10 years older, maybe 15 or 20 years older than I. He knew all about living in this big world of Australia, and I learned a great deal from John in a short period of time. It was always John who was the centre of anything that was going on sort of within the Raft band, and he was always great fun to be around. John knew lurks. He knew how to sort of be in the right place at the right time, or not to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know what I mean? He volunteered to become the teammate for the blokes in the band, which meant that he could get out of band practice just a little early, and maybe 10:15, the rest of us would have to work until 10:30. He'd go out, put the urn on, and make sure that the old band's tea, that's the boss, make sure that his tea was going to be ready at the right time. John would wink to us and say, I'm going to get his tea now, a big wink, and out the door he'd go. And 15 minutes later we'd all be in the band room at the back there to have our cup of tea, and John's got the old man's tea on his special silver tray, and he's going to sort of take it into the squadron leader's room, and just before I'm taking the old man's tea in now, and he'd take his teeth out and and stir the tea gently before he took it into it. We would laugh and think it was the greatest thing we'd ever seen. That was fantastic. John joined the Air Force Band as a tuba player. He thought he was going to be a euphonium player. What he didn't realise was that the squadron leader had invited lots of euphonium players into the band, telling them that one day they could be the euphonium player, but they never got to be, did they? Because the euphonium player they had was a bloke called Jace Williams, who was an extremely good player, and nobody was going to shift him. So John, instead of becoming the euphonium player in the Air Force Band, became a tuba player. Now, very sensibly, he became the best tuba player that he could be, and he probably became the best best tuba player in the country for a long period of time. He was certainly the most familiar face on the tuba, because we used to have talent quests long before The Voice and those things that we see now, and John used to appear on the Channel O showcase, which was compared by Gordon Boyd, and he actually won that. He won the instrumental section of that. He was the man with the dancing tuba, or the dancing man with the tuba, or whatever you like. He used to play Tico Tico and things like that. Flight of the Bumblebee at 500 miles an hour, dancing up and down with his tuba, and John was Mr. Popular on the tuba. He made a great career out of playing that ugly instrument. He was also playing solos in the Salvation Army, but once they found that he could play the tuba, he was still just hanging on to his staff band days. And I remember that you were going to play a tuba solo in what we called a congress, John, didn't we? Which was the biggest festival, the biggest concert of the entire year, and John was due to play it. And he invited me to stay with him at that lovely little home that they had out at Diamond Creek. It was at the first family in Diamond Creek. And we were travelling in the Volkswagen on our way to work, and John thought, I better rehearse the part, make sure that I know, when to stop and when to start and how the part goes. So I had the score, and I'm watching the score, and John's driving the Volkswagen, he's singing the part, and we're hurtling down the hill from Diamond Creek down towards Greensboro, and we hit that stone bridge right down at the bottom of Greensboro Road there. Went smack into it, John. It was fantastic. It was great fun. And John stopped singing, funnily enough, when we hit the bridge. But on that night, at exactly the same place that we'd hit the bridge, when we got to that point in the music, John lost the music too. Suddenly blanked out, couldn't remember. He thought that he was sitting down on the bridge, wondering what to do next.